Good afternoon. Welcome to the big show, as we call it every day. That's what we call it, right? The big show. Someday one of you is going to write something here. You're going to leave a comment. You're going to say to me, here's what a good name for this show is. But until then, it's just going to be the big show. I'm Paul Zeise. And of course, this is kind of an interesting time in sports. If you're in a town like Pittsburgh, where the two main sports are hockey and football, tomorrow's the hockey trade deadline. The Penguins already made two deals, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But the Penguins made two deals, and from what our hockey guys are telling me, they're going to make a couple of more before tomorrow. The big question is, do they trade a big name? Do they trade somebody like Raquel, who obviously is probably going to bring back a big return, given that every team in America and in Canada needs guys that can score. And, he's one of the guys that doesn't have a no-trade clause. So we're going to talk about that, see what the Penguins are going to try and do, make themselves a little bit better. Clearly, the elephant in the room is, can they unload a guy like Carlson? Can they convince one of their other guys who has one of the other guys who basically has a no-trade clause, and we know who they are? Could you convince one of them? And I'll tell you this, if I'm Kyle Dubas, I'm probably looking to find a way to dump Tristan Jarry on somebody. I'm not saying you're going to be able to do it, but sometimes you have to give a little bit more to get somebody to take one of your bad players. I mean, that old talk show thing, we're going to give you all of our bad players for your good players. That's, talk show callers and people that interact and fans, that's what they often say. Well, let's give away our three worst players. That should be enough to get, the other team's best player. That's just not how it works. But sometimes what you can do is throw in a sweetener. And the sweetener is, hey, tell you what, we'll give you this prospect, or we'll give you this draft pick, or we'll give you this, other player or whatever, if you take this guy and, deal with his contract. The other sweetener is, we'll trade you this guy and we'll eat, $2 million of his contract or something. So, I think Kyle Dubas would have to be a little bit creative to unload Tristan Jarry, but he should try. He absolutely should try, because to me, that is the biggest issue that they have with this rebuild going on. I know that they want, we want younger guys in there and all that other stuff. To me, it makes it really, really interesting in so many ways if you don't get a goalie. And if you don't get a goalie, what are we doing? But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get to, the Steelers, because here's the thing. We are now 4 days away from the quote-unquote legal tampering period, which is the stupidest thing in sports. Now, actually, let me give you one other dumber thing. I always have this on my soapbox. I say to people jokingly, put this on my grave. But the worst thing in sports is the 55-foot timeout rule in the NBA. But that's a different story for a different day. The legal tampering period in the NFL, where you're basically allowed to talk to other teams, or other teams are allowed to talk to you for a couple of days before they can actually sign you, is stupid. Just make it free agency. I mean, what are we talking about here? However, the legal tampering period, I believe, begins on Monday. I was reading today, 4 days from now, so that'd be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, Monday. And so that's when teams can start to talk to players. Players can start to talk to teams, but nobody can sign until like Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it is, whatever the legal tampering period is. So my point is this. You've got 4 days now if you really want Justin Fields. And I kind of feel like you should want him. If you're the Steelers, you've got 4 days to kind of come up with a deal for him and hope that he'll take it. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay more than you want to pay. And I don't know. I know that there's people that don't believe that, but listen, your value as a player, okay, goes up when you go on the market. If you're somebody who is going to have a few suitors. So to me, it's kind of a tug of war here. People would say, well, and I heard somebody on one of these talk stations talking about how, well, just, why would Justin Fields this close to being a free agent? Why would he agree to a deal with the Steelers? And the reason is because stability. Like, all these guys want stability as much as they want, to make as much money as they possibly want. There's a stability factor. If he goes to Monday and then he goes on the free agent market, then things are up in the air for him and he's not sure what's going to happen. So, maybe he takes, and I'm not sure where he's going to be. I think 14, 15 million probably is going to be the ceiling if the Steelers sign him. 3 years, 45 million, something like that. But if he takes that, he's got that. If he takes that, he knows, okay, I'm secure for at least the next 2 years. They could cut me the third year, but if I work out enough guaranteed money, doesn't matter. Is it worth going to free agency and risking that and maybe everything else that comes with it? Is it worth risking that for $1 million or $2 million more? I don't know. I know a lot of guys, they like having a bird in the hand. It's the discussion about a guy like Andrew McCutchen. You remember when he was in, arbitration, pre-arbitration and all that stuff, and they signed him to a deal for like $51 million. They said, we'll wipe out some of your last arbitration years and we'll give you $51 million. At that point, for him, it was simple. He grew up in a family that really didn't have a ton of money. Wasn't like he was like already rich, like a Ken Griffey Jr. or somebody like that. No. His thing is, wait, you're going to give me $51 million right now, and I'm going to give up two or three of his free agency years. Again, stability, money, bird in the hand. Now, he ends up winning a couple of MVPs or whatever, and all of a sudden he leaves a whole bunch of money on the table. But you know what? He got paid anyway. I mean, I think, it's the same thing with Justin Fields. If Justin Fields wants to gamble, then he'll wait until Monday or Tuesday, see what his market value is. And there's something to be said for that. But he could also say, tell you what, I'll sign a 2-year deal for $15 million. So that's $30 million total, $15 million a year. And guess what? At the end of those 2 years, I'm going to be a starter for 2 years in this league. Plus the 4 years that I already was a starter. But I have a chance to be a starter for 2 years with the Steelers, right? If they sign me for $15 million a year, it means they can go out and make the rest of their offense better with some other dollars or whatever. So if that's the case, okay, I'm going to be 28 years old when the 2 years are up. And at 28 years old, I'm going to be, have a track record of the last 2 years of being a really good player in this league at quarterback. Now I can go get paid. That's the other way he could do it. He could basically ensure that he's going to get, $30 million or whatever over the next 2 years. And he's young enough that he could go sign a really big contract if he plays well. And I laugh at people that tell me, and some of these even analysts that tell me, that he'll never make. Listen, Daniel Jones makes $40 million or made 40, got a deal for $40 million a year. I mean, that's what quarterbacks are making now. Dak Prescott is making 60. So if Justin Fields, you mean to tell me if he over the next 2 years for the Steelers, he plays really well, they make the playoffs twice, he wins a playoff game or two, right? He clearly proves he can be a franchise-type quarterback. You mean to tell me at 28 years old he ain't coming back and saying, okay, guess what? I took a little discount. I took a shorter deal. I bet on myself. But guess what? Now I want one of those, 6-year deals worth, 50, 6 times 50, $300 million. I want $300 million with 150 of it guaranteed. I mean, that's how he could bet on himself. And so the Steelers have to really work through this. They have to figure out how to lock him up without overcommitting to him, because if he turns out that he's not very good, now you're stuck with him. So that's why the story about Justin Fields here is kind of fascinating, because now we're to the end of the line here. Now we're to the end where you got 4 days to figure this out, both sides. And it sounds like both sides are motivated to get it done, but I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's that simple, because both sides would really, really, really like to get some assurances that the other side might not want to give. Like the Steelers want to try and probably get some assurances, so they don't want a ton of guaranteed money, or they don't want a lot of years, or they want, the backloaded 2 or 3 years on the back end. They say they do a 4-year deal. They want it to be where the 3rd and 4th year they can get out of it pretty easily with a, simple buyout type thing. But Justin Fields don't want it. No. It's not how it works. You're going to sign me to a deal, and you're going to give me some guaranteed money. But Justin Fields also understands that he's not going to get the $40, $50, $60 million, whatever it's going to be per year, unless he proves himself. So he's going to have to do a prove it deal. I mean, in the perfect world, would you like it if you're the Steelers? Would you say, all right, tell you what, we're going to gamble. We're going to gamble. And here's how we're going to gamble. We're going to give Justin Fields a 5-year deal for $130 million, and we're going to give him $80 million of that guaranteed. Guarantee nobody else is coming close to that. And also, we're going to make sure that a lot of the money is front loaded a little bit, so that the last 2 years, if we have to get out of it, he still makes a bunch of his money. But we're not hamstrung salary cap wise. So my point is, if you are the Steelers, you're gambling there. But the flip side is, if he turns out to be a really, really good player over the next 2 years or year or whatever, leads you to the playoffs and proves he can be that franchise guy, now you've got a franchise guy for $25 million less than what the market is. There's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for that. The other part of that is, if you can get him for $30 million a year for 5 years, and he's willing to do that and to structure a deal so that it's front loaded with a bunch of money that's guaranteed, but still a lot of money that's that he has to earn. If he's willing to do that, if I'm the Steelers, I think about it. I mean, ultimately, I don't think either side would want to do that. And, those of you that know me, I mean, I've been known to gamble a little bit here and there, allegedly, but I'm a little bit of a gambler when it comes to that. And I will tell you that I think is that the Steelers aren't going to gamble like that, because that's not how they do. That's just not how they do it. And you know that. So I think that, these next 4 days, first of all, these next 24 hours, if you're a Penguin fan, are going to be really, really interesting. But these next 4 days are going to be really interesting, because it's sort of like, now we are in the throes of the precursor to the legal tampering period. So now we're in a place where, okay, we have to see all the jockeying that's going to go on, and see who's going to basically get picked here or picked there and all that other good stuff. I just think it's really, really interesting. And these next, 4 days could have a lot to do with the way that these two franchises are shaped, for the foreseeable future. Now, I got a kick out of this. I mean, I just think that, there's a lot of people talking about Jaxson Dart now. He's it's funny to me. There's always what I call the Combine Warrior or the Senior Bowl Warrior or the everyone jump on the bandwagon Warrior. And the latest is this Jaxson Dart, who's gone from like a second, third rounder type to now we've got guys like Charles Davis, who is, who's a really good NFL analyst. I don't like to, pick on people. He's a good, really good NFL analyst. Been doing it for a long time. He's usually not a hot take guy, but his latest mock draft, and I bring this up because there's a lot of people that were talking about the Steelers going out and getting Jaxson Dart. His latest mock draft, however, has Jaxson Dart going third. He's got Shedeur Sanders going first, Cam Ward going second, and Jaxson Dart going third. So it's going to be interesting. I would say this. I don't know that he's going to go that high. And I think there are some real questions about him and real questions about whether or not he can operate within an NFL system. What he does have is what was going on here? Here we go. So anyway, this is really annoying. But what he has, there we go. Sometimes this crap happens. What he does have is a big arm. He's 6'2". He's got big hands, and we learned, a couple years ago that seems to matter. I don't think he's going to be a guy that is going to go in the top 5. I could see him going maybe in the top 20. The question then becomes what if he's on the board still at 20? There's two ways to look at it. One is, hey, the Steelers should grab him. Why not? Even if you sign Justin Fields for a couple of years, you grab him and see what he can be. Or it's going to be interesting to see, okay, that doesn't happen. If he drops like that, are the Steelers going to say basically like everybody else, well, there's something wrong with him? I personally hope that the Steelers don't draft him in the first round. I don't know that he's going to be this great quarterback. I got a lot of concerns about him because some of his shortcomings, one, I watched Ole Miss play a lot, and he played in that Lane Kiffin offense. And I think that's one of those things where it really is going to be he's got to go to the right place, the right system. And I don't know that the Steelers would be a place where his talents would really fit well. It's one of those things where, he played in an offense where he basically just is very good at getting the ball out of his hands pretty quickly and getting it to receivers because it was one of those spread offenses and quick strikes, bang, 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 bang. And that's what he did a lot. He got the ball out of his hands quick, let his playmakers make plays. He does a couple of things, however, with those guys. Number one, those kind of guys, they sometimes struggle when they have to read defenses. When they get to the NFL and they've got to read defenses. He's not an elite athlete either. That's the other part of it. But when you have to read defenses, it's going to be one of those things where it's probably a learning curve for a guy who basically ran his system. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you in college football. I'll let you in on a little secret. People here in Pittsburgh were all bent out of shape because, Pitt went out and they hired a real young, up-and-coming offensive coordinator who had one of these high-tech, newfangled systems, Cade Bell. And people got all bent out of shape because about halfway through the season, Pitt's offense started not working. Now, part of that is their quarterback got hurt, and they had a real, circus trying to figure out who to play quarterback. But the other part of it was that teams started watching film. And what they noticed is that Pitt ran the same offense against everybody. And Cade Bell was even quoted as saying something to the effect of, we run our system. We don't worry what the defense is doing, we run our system. Which works to a point. Because it is all about just sort of looking to see what the defense is doing. Okay, defense is here. They're in this defense. Bang, bang, bang. We got 5 receivers. There's going to be the hole. I'm going to throw it. Catch the ball. 1001. Boom, it's out of my hand, and we go. Boom, it's out of my hand, and we go. Okay, they're doing this. Good. Now I'm going to check into a running play. Snap. Okay, but here's the thing. Cade Bell now is going to have to adjust what he's doing a little bit. He came from 1AA or FCS or whatever you want to call it, where I imagine that he probably, you were able to get away with some things that you can't get away with in a power conference because you've got better coaching, you've got better group of players, you've got better, talent. There's not going to be 2 or 3 guys you can exploit on every defense like there is in FCS because they only have 60 scholarships. Well, most of the guys that do that kind of system, they operate the same way. They don't necessarily, watch a ton of film. And they don't necessarily game plan for the defense they're getting ready to play. Because it's all about their system and what they're running and what they're doing and how they're doing it. So if you think about it, Jaxson Dart has been basically playing in one of those systems. So how is he going to be ready to play in the NFL next year when he's got to play in a system where he's going to have to read defenses, where he's going to have to go to his second and third options, where he's going to have to make time and room in a pocket as opposed to everything being basically based on timing? That's really what it's going to be. And so to take him that high, I don't know if that's where you want to take a guy who plays in a system like that, unless he's extraordinarily talented. And the reality is, he's not. He's not like super talented guy. He's just basically a guy who has some, good skills, but I wouldn't say he's got elite skills. And I think that's what you have to remember when you look at a guy like that. If he doesn't have elite skills and you're going to ask him to play a completely different way than maybe he wants to play, boy, I just don't know if that's really what you're going to try and do. I don't know if that's really a guy you really, really want. Period. So we'll see what happens with Jaxson Dart. I'll be really interested. It's pretty clear to me that he's going to probably go higher than he should. Let's face it. That's where it's at right now. He's probably going to go a little bit higher than he should, and people will talk about it, and they'll be, okay, well, maybe the Steelers should have taken him. I just don't know if that really is going to be the way that they should go and they should operate, because you know what? A few years ago, they took a quarterback in the first round, and he had some real questions about him. He had some real questions about his arm strength and a number of other things. But, boy, I'll tell you this much right now. It didn't work out for them. And there's some people that think it set them back 5 or 6 years. Game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archie's and have a good time when you're there. Tell Archie I sent you. The Penguins made a couple of deals for basically got rid of a couple of veterans, Michael Bunting being the guy that probably, some people were like, well, it's probably time. But Bunting is hurt right now. And the Penguins added Tommy Novak and Luke Schenn. Now, the claim here among Kyle Dubas is those two guys were brought here to actually be on the team and not be traded again. I don't know. I put it this way. If we're talking tomorrow after the trade deadline and those two guys are still on the team, then I guess I'll have some thoughts on it. But quite frankly, it feels like those are two guys you trade for and then you flip them for picks or prospects or whatever. So, I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I don't know that those two guys make the Penguins better. They certainly don't make them closer to what Mike Sullivan, the way Mike Sullivan wants to play. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do next with those guys and whether or not they keep them. Then the other deal that we have to watch is basically, are they going to be able to find somebody that will be a trade partner that will be willing to give them and overpay for a guy like Rickard Rakell? A goal scorer, somebody that, you put him on a line with a good center or whatever, he has a chance to be a really good player, and as a result, he's going to bring back something in return. And I think that's what it's important for them to try and do, is find somebody, some trade partner that's willing to give them something for Rakell. And then, of course, as I said before, the elephant in the room, the Erik Karlsson, who's got a no trade clause, but apparently is open to at least hearing what they have to say. To me, if we're sitting here tomorrow and Karlsson is still on the team and Rakell is still on the team, I think Dubas will have failed. I think if those two are gone and Jari is gone, I would say then probably, and they got a good haul of like prospects and picks or whatever back, I would say that it's a good day for the Penguins. But, I mean, at the end of the day, they've got to make sure that they're going to do something to make themselves better at this trade deadline, better, younger, and everything else. And I think that's, what we're going to be looking for tomorrow. I mean, I'm no interest in them going out and getting a couple of veteran guys who, are borderline journeymen or, guys that have played a ton of hockey and probably on the downside of their career. They should not bring anybody like that back. Go see if you could get somebody to take Karlsson off your hands. There's still value there. See if you can get somebody to take Rakell off your hands. There's still value there. I mean, if you can find somebody to take Rust off your hands, which I don't think you can because I don't think he's going to waive his no trade, don't be afraid to strip it down. Because at the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen? You can finish in last place. Well, I got news for you. What's that saying? What was that wrestler? Bad news, Brown. I'm afraid I got some bad news. Yeah. Well, right now, the only reason you're not in last place, right, is because you have 4 more games than Buffalo, who is. But you have by far the worst goal differential in the entire East, and the only one that's worse is the San Jose Sharks, who, by the way, you played for a Stanley Cup way back when, was it 6-7 years ago, and they basically had a fire sale as well. I mean, you want to know where the Penguins are. This should put it into some perspective. Okay? Right now, their goal differential is 113 goals behind the Capitals. In other words, they're minus 53. The Capitals are plus 60. The Capitals are the Capitals are more than lapping them. That puts into perspective how bad they've been this year. So what difference does it make? What difference does it make if you strip it down and you finish last? Makes no sense. Tomorrow we'll talk about the trade deadline. We'll talk a little bit more about the fact that the legal tampering period is actually one day closer. Maybe we'll have some Steelers news on some things, and we'll figure some other stuff out. We'll do all that again tomorrow. Until then, enjoy yourself. It is Paul Zeise on The Big Show.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.